this felt a little different in terms of Chris Ballard drafts. That, to me, it felt different. You went and got two defensive ends early. Some said, how come you didn't address left tackle? You must be comfortable with who you have. So the people that are saying, this didn't look quite like a Chris Ballard draft, you would say what?
That all of the unknown information, it's easy to move down when you've got all the information and you feel really comfortable with the depth of talent in the draft. So we didn't. We thought there was plenty of good players. But saying that, we just didn't feel the need to collect, a bunch of picks from 3, 4, and 5 to move down. So if we felt in each round that if we liked the player that we were going to take and he had the character to match, and that's a big thing with us, Colin. I mean, like sometimes I wonder, there's times I think we're almost too hard on the character aspect of it, but a lot of times, and just, as long as I've been in the league, and when I look back at any miss that I've had and been a part of, and I've been a part of a bunch of them, usually it occurs because of some character flaw, whether it's work ethic, whether it's instincts, whether it's toughness, there's something, it's usually not talent. It's usually a character flaw. So we just said this year, we're going to be a little more conservative. And if we come across players that we know, one, are going to make us better. 2, we're at a position that we covet, which, defensive front's always going to be one that we covet. And 3, fit the character profile that we want, then we're going to stay put and we're going to take the player.
Now, you did take a player, one of your defensive ends had a little bit of an Achilles tendon problem. So, I mean, listen, you play football long enough, Chris, you get hurt. So when you take one of your early picks, had an injury history, how do you weigh that?
The talent was so high that we thought that it was worth the risk. And then when you combine that with, where he was at in his rehab process, our medical information from our doctors, we had him do a bunch of work on it. And we thought Dio was we thought he was a first round talent, and to get him at 54, we felt pretty fortunate to do. And then anytime you're able to add a disruptive player up front is hard to do in the draft, especially later in the draft. Usually when you look at the defensive ends in this league, I'm sure you're going to get some that show up later in the draft, but the majority of them are coming, early in the draft. So when you can get a big disruptive player at 54, we just thought it was worth the risk. I'll never forget last year when we took Julian Blackman in the 3rd round, and we got a lot of questions on the pick, and we kept wondering, because we had Julian at one point at the back end of the 1st round, and we ended up kind of kicking him down a little bit. But he had an ACL, and I just said, look, what's the worst case scenario when we're going to get him back? Can we live with that? And is the player good enough worth the wait? And we thought it was worth the wait.
On average, in your life, Bears, Chiefs, Colts, how many elite pass rushers per draft on your grade board?
I would tell you 2. At most in a draft.
Wow.
Where you just say, you know what, there's a no-brainer. And I want you to think back to our history, like I look back to Chicago. So we had Alex Brown, who was a 4th round pick, really good football player. We traded for Wale Agunleye. Jerry and Bobby DePaul, he made a great trade, and he kind of helped us and put that great defense we had in 05 and 06. And then we signed Julius Peppers for, $100 million, and he was worth every penny of it. All right. Then you go to Kansas City, and we had Tamba and Justin Houston, and Tamba was a 1st round pick and Justin was a 3. And then we came here and the cupboard was pretty dry defensively. So, we had to go out and we signed Danico Autry, which initially we played him at the 3, then we kicked him out the end. Then we signed, Justin Houston. So we've been kind of just piecemealing it here. And so now we're just trying to throw as much as we can at talent. We've got some other young players that we really like, and Tyquan Lewis, who played really well for us last year. We have another young rusher in Kamoko Toure, who is really talented. He's just had some bad luck with the knee. So we've got some young kids here that we think can also, get into the mix. We signed Rochelle that can play a really significant role for us, that played good football in LA. And then we have Muhammad back. You can't do it with you got to have an 8-man rotation. I full-heartedly believe this, especially now that you're talking about an added game. We're talking about 17 games. But to get through the entirety of the grind of the season and to make a real playoff run, you've got to be able to keep your snaps down on the front. And you've got to be able to play 8 or 9 guys through the course of the season and be successful. So you can't have enough defensive linemen on your football team. If you just look at the runs that have look at Tampa last year. When they got hot, they had a good rotation going. And I know the 2 top front lines guys get credit, but they weren't playing 100% of the snaps. You go back to Frisco the year before, they lost in the Super Bowl, but they had a good rotation of ends. That's one of the things we really believe in. So anytime you got a chance to take a disruptive front player, you just do it. You just take them.
Chris, the Carson Wentz deal for you, it's interesting. You have always been, you'll pay big money infrequently, but you'll do it for the rare star. So when you're gonna eat up some of that contract, you're having discussions with Frank Reich. This is not something you have a cup of coffee in the morning and do. I know your diligence. Take me to the moment, the drive home, the drive to work, the discussion, the moment when you, Chris Ballard, said, okay, I'm going with Carson Wentz. We're doing it. You talked me into it.
We had been having long discussions, and, you wish there was just like a eureka moment, like, all right, no doubt. Unfortunately, that's not how my mind works. I have got to process things over a long period of time and really think them through. And then decisions will be made when they need to be made. I've always thought that, why make a decision before you have to? And let's think through all the things that all the parameters of what goes into it, all the dominoes that are going to, what the dominoes are going to be down the line, not just now, but also in 2022, 2023, and 2024. You've got to be thinking 2-3 years out on because every decision you make has an impact on your football team. And look, we dabbled around with Matt Stafford, and the Rams did a great job coming in and, that's the player they wanted. We weren't quite there yet. And then when it came to Carson, it's a little like Phillip last year. Frank and Nick Sirianni had a really good relationship with Phillip. He knew the offense. And it was almost a seamless transition when we brought him in. Well, I almost see the same thing with Carson here over the first month and a half, where it's a pretty seamless transition for Carson just because of his relationship with Frank, who also happens to be the play caller. And I don't think you can ever minimize how important that is, Colin. Being with Coach Reed and being with Andy for 4 years taught me a lot about offensive football and how important the play caller is in all of this. And, Frank has a lot of that in him, and the quarterback has to feel comfortable with, who's pulling the strings and who's pulling the trigger. And that made the trade for Carson a lot easier, because I knew there was a trust level between the two of them. And trust is everything in this league, and trust between the quarterback and the play caller is everything. Now, look, there's a lot more things that go into play. You got to protect him. You got to put enough weapons around him. But if the quarterback feels really comfortable, and the play caller feels comfortable with the quarterback, I think you got a chance, for success.
Chris, ideally, the owner would own, the general manager would manage, the coach would coach, the quarterback would quarterback. With Jim, because he's been doing it so long, have there been moments with you that he comes in and gives you a macro opinion. And he walks out of the room and you're like, okay, I got to sleep on this again. It doesn't have to be specific to a corner's hips, or a running back's pivot. It's just a big world view on something.
So look, I'm very fortunate because it's good. It makes my job easier because on game day, Mr. Irsay knows what he's seeing out there. So I don't have to come in on Monday and there's no BS to the deal now. Like he knows what he was watching out there on the field. And so he knows if we have problem areas, there's no sugarcoating. He's watching the same game I'm watching. So he knows. So that makes it easier from a need standpoint when, he's looking at the game. He goes, Chris, we really need to address this. And I would tell you, he's usually right on what he's saying. And yes, I'll give you a very clear example is last year, we really liked Jonathan Taylor. And we liked him in the building. Our scouts liked him. Our coach, everybody liked him. And I'll never forget in the second round, we're all on a Zoom call. Every scout, everybody's on it. And all of a sudden, Mr. Irsay pops up and goes, hey, Chris, you really like Jonathan Taylor. What are you doing? Go get him. And, next thing you know, we're making the trade up 3 picks to go get Jonathan Taylor.
So he just said, what you love, you did your homework, go get him.
Yeah, go get him. And I think I think Mr. Irsay really has a special for unique players, the ones that really can change the game. Because you have to have them. You got to have difference makers on Sunday. And I think he saw that. He felt it from us, and he said, "Go get him." And that's a beautiful thing with and here's what's even better. This is not somebody else in his ear. This is him. Like I would tell you that's something that other places have to deal with, where they're having someone in someone's ear saying something. No, this is Mr. Irsay and his knowledge of the game. And his understanding of football and what gives him, an advantage. And I think it's been proven over time.
It's you have very much, you guys remind me a lot of Green Bay. I mean, there's a certain constitution to the way you do business. And I look at the Green Bay situation, and I've said this with Aaron Rodgers. It's very possible it happens in marriages. They've outgrown each other a little. He's California progressive, he's dates celebrities. He's on the front of fitness magazines, and this is a Midwest organization. That's the IBM. That's a proud organization. If you ever had players that you loved, be it Chicago, Kansas City, or the Colts, and it's just like, hey, they've grown. We don't fit. It used to be perfect. Is that something you monitor and realize not all marriages are, Joanna Woodward and Paul Newman? They don't all go 60 years, right?
Yeah, that's normal. And, I just look, at the end of the day here in Indy, what we try to do is really communicate. And I don't ever, if we have an issue, I blame myself for not communicating. And usually most of my screw ups have been because I haven't done a good job communicating. And Frank is outstanding at it. I like to think I'm pretty good at it too. But we have the standard that we have for the way we're going to do, the way we're going to play, the way we're going to practice, the way we're going to prepare. That is what it is. And I think we've brought our young players here that have grown up with us, understand the standard and demand the standard. That has to be, and that has to come from the locker room. Like Frank and the staff can beat down on it, but for the team to be good, it has to come from the locker room. But then we have to constantly be in communication at all points about what's going on, what they, and don't ever let it become it can be a bump in the road. Don't let it become a giant pothole that we can't get out of. And that usually comes back to us just communicating with our players at all points. It doesn't mean that we're giving in, or it doesn't mean it's just about communicating and working through any issues that we have. And I have a lot of like I talked to our team on Thursday for the first time this year, very briefly. And I made sure I just have a lot of trust and faith in the players that we've brought in the building, that I think they understand that we're going to do everything in our power to get them better. That's our job. We want to do everything we can do to get you to your ceiling as a player, because that's going to help them financially. But on the flip side of that, you got to give us back something too. This can't be a one-way street. And the way you work and the way you come together as a team is important for winning. Like Colin, team still wins. I mean, it just does. Teams still win. And it's the teams that can come together, stay healthy, get a little luck along the way, that win in this league.
For as steady as the Colts have been since you've been here, you have had two of the toughest moments in the league as a GM. You have a coach, he backs out. Thank God you have a great backup plan. And then Andrew Luck retires. And these are like, they don't happen. This isn't stuff you go to college for. You don't, Andy Reid's smart. He can't teach you that. The moment of the Andrew Luck thing, that night, did you sleep? Can I just ask you, did you sleep that night?
So I care deeply about Andrew, still do, still very close with him. And like a player's health and well-being long-term, it's important to us. It's important to me. I can't operate. We're judged by our wins and losses. That's how we're judged. But on the flip side of that, I cannot not be emotionally tied. That's just who I am. Like, I can't change who I am. So I was extremely close with Andrew. So I understood. Did I like it? Absolutely not. I got this beautiful quarterback that is just, he's a top 2 or 3 guy in the league. And, we're about to, and we think we got a really good freaking young team and about to freaking take off, and we get thrown a curveball. Well, that's life. I remember explaining it to my children and telling them that, you know what, nobody cares about the problem. All they care about is if you fix it. That's what our league's about. Now, did I have some moments where, I'll tell you this, Colin, I never had a moment where I felt sorry for myself. And I never had a moment where I let the organization feel sorry for themselves. We were going to just keep moving forward and problem solve and try to fix the problem. And that's all you can do. I mean, it just works out. If you just keep working at this and keep doing things the right way, it's going to work out. I mean, problems happen. You got to fix them. Keep moving forward.
By the way, was there a moment last year with Phillip Rivers that you were sitting there maybe after a game with Frank having a cold one and you thought, shit, this old dog can still hunt a little. This guy can still play.
It will go down as one of the highlights of all the years I've been in the league, being around Phillip for a year. Tom told me that. Telesco told me, he said, Chris, you're going to love him. And all right, so we got COVID going on. So I don't actually get to meet Phillip till like June, till he finally gets here, him and his family. And it's very brief. My wife and I drove over to his house just to say hello. And, and then we get to training camp and, we got all these COVID rules and we can't be around each other. And, we're all wearing masks. We're all social distancing. We're doing Zoom meetings. But as the season went on and, we had a little bit of a rough start, but I could just see the team's confidence in Phillip growing. And look, that's because of him. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback in my mind, unequivocally. He's a special leader and special teammate. As the season went on, you could just see the confidence in the team building on the way he played. And I mean, Colin, the guy's toe, I mean, it was, I went in the training room, the thing's black and blue, Most people aren't playing. Dude, he don't even miss a freaking beat. He don't practice on Wednesday for a couple weeks, and he finds a way to play. And he's one of the truly all-time special players to play in this league. What fun. He could still play, Colin. I think Philip probably could have, I mean, first, number one, because he believes it. Like, that's half the battle. Like, he believes he can still play. And two, he's so freaking smart. Like, you can't fool the guy. You can't fool him. And he's just seen so much football. He could still play and find a way to be productive. That's how special Philip was. And let me tell you where I was really proud of him, because it's hard. This game's hard to walk away from. And, and we had a great talk after the season. I said, look, dude, you take your time and you figure out what you want to do and what direction you want to go. And, when he decided to retire, and I thought retired on a really good note to his career, I was very proud of Philip.
Yeah. He's funny. He's one of those guys, if you mic'd him during a game, it could be a TV show. That could be a network television show. He is for as nice a guy as he is and all those kids, he is a trash talker. He and Larry Bird.
Hey, look, when he entered between the lines, he going to try to rip your throat out. And he doesn't cuss. He doesn't, but look, he is competitive and he is out there to win. He's out there to win every drill and every game. And what made this year probably even a little more special was, and it sucks because our fans really didn't get to know him, because of COVID and we were so limited. But the games on the road last year, when we went on the road and there's no fans in the stands and you could hear him, like I'd be upstairs and you could hear him. And it was just, it was great. Cause usually, when you're in a box, you can't hear that kind of stuff, but you could hear him. And he just loved, God loved to play.
Chris, I love the draft. I've said outside of the Super Bowl and conference championships, I could watch the draft and have as much fun as watching a game. Because you do this draft well. Do you ever look at mock drafts? Is there ever a time you're like, I just want to open this crap up. I just kind of want to see what people are thinking. Not to be influenced, but just eyeballs on it. I want to see what they say.
Well, look, I got 5 kids and I got 2 boys who are always looking at it. So they're peppering me all the time. Like, well, this site has you taking him. Nope, not taking him. Why not? So I'm not going to tell you I never look at it. Do I agree with it all the time? Probably not. But with my family and my children, especially my 2 boys, they're 16 and 13. They look at it and they're giving me feedback at all points of how I've screwed it up. And my thinking is all jacked up because the mocks don't have it the way I have it.
Well, when you took Darius Leonard and people went, oh
no, it was even better. The other night after we took Dio, Cole, my oldest son, texted me, he goes, "But Dad, they're killing you on Twitter again." I said, good. That's how I like it.
Chris, it's great seeing you again, buddy. I love it. Yeah. Congrats on everything. Can't wait for camp.
All right, man. Appreciate you having me on.
You bet.